At the crossroads of East and West lies Asia Minor, bordered to the north by the Caucasian Plateau. Thousands of years ago, an Indo-European nation emerged, calling themselves Armenians. By the Golden Age of Rome, Armenia was a revered ally, or a feared enemy. Being on the paths of trade and war was a blessing and a curse. Armenia was under constant threat of attack. Yet neither Alexander the Great nor any other conqueror could subjugate this stubborn people. As time went on, Armenia was caught between Rome and its great enemy, Persia. Each would use Armenia as a buffer against its rival. Great cities were laid waste, time and again. Armenian kings rose to power through a combination of skillful maneuvering and outright warfare. Tigran the Great allied himself with Rome's enemies and extended his empire from the Caspian to the Mediterranean. Rome sent its finest generals against him before he was defeated. This was the end of a golden age for Tigran's people. Like the Romans and the Greeks, the Armenians had their pantheon of ancient gods. Among the nobility, which had been seeded by Persian aristocracy, the monotheistic faith known as Zoroastrianism was also common. But the world was in a time of change again, and merchants traveling to the great centers of trade in the Middle East came into contact with a new idea. A faith that would soon shape the identity of their kinsmen. By the 4th century AD, Armenia had been the first to adopt Christianity as its official religion, even before Constantine tolerated it within the Roman Empire. This new religious identity demanded translation of the scriptures into the language of the people, and for this task, known to scholars as the Queen of Translations, an alphabet was invented. This was a new golden age. A century later, the people of Asia Minor were caught again between the Roman and Persian worlds. The Persian Shah sought to strengthen his hold over his empire by forcing all Christians to renounce their faith and adopt Zoroastrianism, the Persian religion. This enraged the Armenian nobility. Abandoned by Byzantium, a general named Vartan Mamagonian led his people in revolt. It was Armenia's first test as a Christian nation. Facing superior odds, Vartan and his nobles were killed. Their wives carried on the fight. Eventually tiring of war, the Persian court negotiated a truce and allowed freedom of religion. But soon Persia itself would fall under the waves of invasions from the east. Each invader brought greater devastation. The centuries that followed wore away the ancient homeland. Many fled west to the Byzantine Empire. By the medieval age, Byzantium weakened, and the kingdom of Cilicia emerged and prospered. Again, this would only last for a time. For yet another invasion would strike Byzantium. Asia Minor would soon fall under the rule of the Ottoman Empire. In theory, Islamic law granted Christians and Jews a certain amount of freedom. The Ottomans were shrewd in managing their multi-ethnic empire. But as time went on, Ottoman leaders grew corrupt, and minorities received harsh treatment. Christian Armenians and Greeks were prohibited from carrying arms or serving in the military. Non-Muslims had to pay special taxes. and their word was not admissible in court. Abdul Hamid came into power at a time when minorities were clamoring for reforms. He responded in kind and earned the title the Red Sultan. Sultan Hamid encouraged a climate of fear. Kurdish tribesmen were given license to commit atrocities. There were massacres, and all the while, the victims were prohibited from carrying arms in self-defense. Meanwhile, across the border with Russia was an ancient enclave of Christian Armenians. It was a land of lush peaks and fertile valleys. Its name, loosely translated, means dark forest in the mountains. The ancient clan of Armenians who lived here ruled themselves. Around them lived the Tatars, or Azerbaijanis, a Turkic people. The land of Azerbaijan itself had oil. Under the Russians, many Armenians moved to the capital, Baku, and worked its oil fields. At the turn of the 20th century, Russia was playing the Azeris and Armenians living in Baku against each other. There were outbursts of ethnic violence. At about this time, a progressive reformist party, popularly known as the Young Turks, deposed Abdul Hamid. Minorities were promised better treatment. This experiment was doomed to fail. When Turkey entered the First World War as Germany's ally, it turned on its minorities. Of these, Armenians were the hardest hit. Under the pretext of national safety, an ancient people was driven from its historic homeland. Anyone of influence was rounded up and executed. Those in the army were stripped of their weapons and reassigned to labor battalions. In a systematic fashion, old men, women, and children were forced to march through deserts